Well, did you know records show every year nearly 4.5 million Americans are bitten by dogs, and that 60% of the victims are children? With 75 million dogs in the country, most are harmless, but even nice dogs can bite. We mention all of this because this is the beginning of Dog Bite Prevention Week. It starts today. And joining us this morning is animal behavior expert Rachel Mairose from Secondhand Hounds. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
You have a little Sparkle here with you, who doesn't look too aggressive.
No, Sparkle is not too aggressive, but it's a good, it's just good to see that a dog even this size can bite.
Yeah.
And we just want to be aware that it's not breed or anything like that that determines if a dog will bite. It just is situational a lot of the time.
And in her case, she has a broken leg.
Exactly.
Talk about how that can contribute to a dog's behavior.
Well, she has a broken front leg. It was broken last week, and when a dog is in pain or feeling fearful, it has a really, it can bite. It's kind of a defense mechanism.
Right.
It's that fight or flight instinct, and if they can't get away, they might end up biting. So we want to avoid those sort of situations.
And that's, of course, the tricky thing. You don't know if you see a dog, if they have some injury or internal problem going on.
Exactly.
What are other signs to watch out for? Because a lot of times we put so much trust in the organizations we're adopting dogs from, or that we're getting from a shelter, that they've gone through the normal testing. But how do we know, for comfort and our own peace of mind, that a dog's not aggressive?
I think body language is huge. At Secondhand Hounds, we take in hundreds and hundreds of dogs all the time, and what we want to do is read their body language to make sure they're feeling comfortable. There's two main types of aggression. There's fear aggression, and then there is aggression that comes from being possessive or territorial. So, for example, with fear aggression, you want to be looking for signs like a tucked tail, the ears will be back, you'll see a lot of whites of their eyes, and they'll just in general have that sense of discomfort and kind of fear. A lot of times those dogs will yawn and just give the signs that they're not comfortable. So we want to give those dogs their good space and not approach them.
Right.
Another, like territorial and protective dogs, their signs are kind of the opposite. They have oftentimes stiff high tail wags or a stiff high tail. They'll have their ears forward, they'll have the intense stiff face, and they'll be approaching you. And those dogs you also want to be careful about.
What sort of situations will we see a dog maybe demonstrating some of those? If I think of feeding times, we've all been taught that that's the time you don't approach a dog you don't know.
So, for example, resource guarding is what you're talking about. So that can be food, that could be laps. Sometimes these little dogs, they get possessive of their parents' lap. It can be with bones. So, for me, I always say definitely always monitor your children around dogs. Children are the most likely to get bit. They can't read those body language signs like the baring of the teeth or the lip curls. They don't know what that means.
Right.
So it's the parents' responsibility to really be watching out for their children.
And sometimes it can catch owners by surprise. Sometimes a dog, it comes out of nowhere. You've had the dog for years, and all of a sudden, one neighbor comes over and the dog shows this aggressive behavior. What do you do when something happens? Right.
For one, you want to make sure that if it is a bite, that it is being treated appropriately. You need to report it, and then you need to get your dog into training. There's different circumstances that can trigger a dog's reactions. So you want to determine what those are to prevent another one from happening in the future.
And I'm glad you mentioned reporting it, because sometimes people are worried, oh, it's a friend or it's a neighbor. We don't want to get into legal issues, but there's an important reason for reporting it.
You just want to have it on the record, and that way we do know if a dog is increasingly more dangerous, it is being recorded, and then proper measures can be taken. My goal is to make sure the community is safe, so I always want to make sure that people are taking the proper measures to make sure that something even worse isn't going to happen in the future.
And there is, of course, a point for some dogs when they're just not going to work for your family, or maybe they're just not going to work in your neighborhood. How do you determine that?
I think talking to behaviorists are huge. Talking to your veterinarian, there can be medicines that they can get on. But if it's at the point where you can no longer handle your dog, that's at the point where you might want to consider talking to a rescue and seeing if the dog is even placeable. But if it is, we're willing to help. We always try to help when we can.
All right. And we want to mention that little Sparkle is up for adoption, correct? Such a cutie. How old is she?
She is 13 weeks old. She has surgery tomorrow on her leg, and then she will be up for adoption. But we have tons of dogs on our website, secondhandhounds.org. In case Sparkle isn't the dog for you, we probably have one that is.
All right. Thank you, Rachel, so much.
You so
Good
much.
advice, and happy What is it again?
Bite Prevention Week.
Dog Bite Prevention Week. There we go. Over to you, Cody. No biting at us.